Hi, I'm Andrew Sheps, and welcome back to Bounce Factory. This is the second video in the series of walkthrough videos, and in this video, we're going to talk about taking snapshots again, but I'm going to show you how you can have more than one mix pass per snapshot. Alright, so I'm in the same session I was in before, and I'm going to click Take Snapshot, and you'll notice that it's going to tell me you don't have a bounce selection. Okay, that's fine. And it's a much faster trip. That's because the app knows that the last snapshot it took was from this same session, so it's going to reuse all of the information it gathered last time. If you do a save as or you open up another session, then it would just go through and look at your bounce dialog and gather up all the same information it got last time. But because we're in the same session, none of that's changed, so it's much faster. So we're right back here. Everything is set up exactly how we had it. If I hit last snapshot, what we've done now is fill this dialog in from the last snapshot as opposed to the default, which is to fill it in from the session settings. And what's great about that is the last snapshot has the additional settings of importing to an existing track and exporting a copy after bounce, and how I want to export that copy. So you get all of the more robust information that Bounce Factory keeps track of right back onto the screen if you just click fill from last snapshot. So we're going to call this, we'll call it demo, I don't know. Let's pretend we're printing a main mix of this, okay? So we've got a mix that's approved. So I'm printing at the sample rate of the session. I'm offline. I'm importing it. I want to import it to an existing track, so I'm going to go ahead and select here. Now, just because I didn't show you this before, let's say that I didn't have the right selection and I need to bounce this much of the session. I can just recapture the selection now, and it goes ahead and updates these numbers here so you can see. And the same color coordination with the parameters will happen on the selection. If I have a selection, it will show green. If I capture with no selection, that's still valid, and it will say, well, you can go ahead and do that because it'll bounce the entire session, but they're orange to show that this is not necessarily the most ideal state. But if you're somebody who always lets it bounce the whole session, then that's fine. You can just leave it with no selection. I'm going to go ahead and make a selection now. Okay. Now, I want to call your attention to the bottom part of the screen because this is where the app starts to get really powerful. You can have one snapshot, which is a picture of every single thing in the session. Now, this includes everything except the actual audio edits that are on the timeline. So this will include insert assignments. It can include insert settings. It can include send assignments, send levels, send mutes. It can include automation modes. It can include whether tracks are muted, the volume of tracks, whether tracks are inactive. It's everything that you can do when you save a session other than the edits themselves, but the app also will keep track of what playlist is active on a track for each mix pass. Then once you have that snapshot, you can have multiple mix passes for the snapshot, and the parameters that can change between those mix passes are whether tracks are soloed, muted, the automation mode, and what playlist is selected. So if you're going to leave the inserts, the sends, the volume automation, all that stuff alone, but you want to print multiple passes of a mix, and I'm going to set up an example of that right now, then you could do that by having one snapshot and multiple mix passes within it. So I've got my main mix, which is going to be the session exactly as it is now. And let's say that I need to print just a really basic set of mixes for this. The first thing I need to do is I need to mute my lead vocals and print a TV mix. Now, one of the concepts that's important to get your head around here is that for most of these extra mix pass types, you don't actually mute the track and then say add a mix pass, because it would have to go through the entire session and get the information from all of the tracks, and it doesn't necessarily need to do that when we're only going to affect a few tracks. So what it works on for almost all of the additional mix passes is the track selection, and then the type of mix pass you add will determine what happens with those tracks. So now I'm going to make this obvious by showing you how it works. So I'm going to select my lead vocal VCA, which I know if that's muted, that will mute all of my lead vocals. Then I'm going to come down here, and this button says Add Selected Track Mute Pass. And it's not spelled out for a reason I'll show you later because I needed room for one more button. But if I say Add Selected Track Mute Pass, it will say, what do you want to call this? I'm going to call this the TV mix. I'm going to say OK. And there we go. Muted tracks pass, 1 mix pass. So you build up a list of mix passes that will tell you what type of mix pass they are and how many mix passes are within it. So now I want to do my instrumental. That's just going to be my lead and my background's muted. So I click Add Selected Track Mute Pass again here. This is my instrumental. Okay, now I need to print an acapella mix, which is basically the inverse of this. So I need these 2 VCAs soloed. So without changing my track selection, I can just click Add Selected Track Solo Pass. And it does exactly the same thing. And what this name is, this is the name that will be entered into the file name portion of the bounce dialog when it bounces that mix. So the standard mix pass is the session exactly how we have it now, bounced with that name. And then this, we've got a muted tracks pass, we've got a second muted tracks pass, and we've got a soloed tracks pass that give me my TV, instrumental, and acapella. And those are the names that are going to be bounced when I bounce those mixes. That's pretty cool already, but now it gets even crazier. Now let's say that this is a track that has some bad language, and I need to print clean versions. Okay, I can switch my vocals to the clean playlists, which have these edited out. I don't know, you got some sine waves going or whatever your edit is. And then what I can say is, well, I need to print a main mix of this. So that's going to be with these 2 tracks set to these playlists. So I can say Add Selected Track Playlist Pass, and what it will do is to get the current playlist name of the selected tracks, and it will save that as being different from the main mix pass. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and this is going to be my main mix clean, and it grabs playlist information for those 2 tracks. Then I'm going to set the tracks back, because what's very important is the standard mix pass and the snapshot are based on the state of the session when you click proceed. So you can change anything you want in the session. You could remix the song while you're in this spot and change volume, change what's active, change a bunch of plugins. But once you click proceed, that's the state of the session that is the basis of all of these mixes. So however we leave the session is the standard mix pass, and then the muted tracks pass will mute these 2 tracks, but it will leave these playlists as they were when you clicked proceed. So I've done my alternate mix with my clean, but then I've got to put them back before I do my main mix. Now, but you're saying, hold on a second, I need to do a clean acapella and a clean TV. Well, clean TV I don't actually have to do because, yeah, it's actually just a clean acapella, because if I mute the vocals, that takes the profanity out. So what we need to do now is to go into some of the more advanced mix passes. That lives under the Add Batch button. So now you have to select your tracks before you go in. So what we're going to do is I'm going to select these 4 tracks, right? Because I'm going to need to get the VCAs soloed, and I'm going to need these tracks switched to the clean. Sorry, I'm not doing this as smoothly as if I'd rehearsed it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this Add Batch dialog. And there are 2 things. We're going to go ahead and do a mini snapshot first. Okay, so this is going to be the acapella mix clean, right? And I've got the 4 tracks selected, I've got my playlist switched, and I've got these 2 soloed. And when I say add, it's going to give me a nice big dialog that says, please make sure all tracks to be included in the mini snapshot have their solo, mute, automation mode, and playlist selections set as you want them. The tracks must be selected. It works based on what tracks are selected and then gets the settings for those. And then a little reminder, don't forget to set the tracks back the way they were before saving the snapshot. That's before you click proceed. So I'm going to say OK, and it's going to get information about those 4 tracks. It needs a little bit more information to be able to do this properly. And there you go. Now if we scroll down to the bottom, you'll see we've got a mini snap. and that is the Acapella Mix Clean. And now before I forget, I am going to set my playlists back here, and I'm going to unsolo, because if I left these soloed, that would be saved into the main snapshot when I click proceed. All right, that's one very powerful thing. And here's another thing that comes up a lot, is printing stems. So in my session, I know that I've got a VCA for every type of instrument. So let's say we're just printing basic stems. So I'm going to go ahead and select my VCAs. Now, we already know that we can make a pass with all of them soloed at the same time, but obviously I need these soloed one at a time. So I could select a VCA, say add selected track solo pass, name it, select the next one, name it. It would go pretty quickly, but that's because I've only got 6 or 7. But what if I have printing 30 stems for a song? So if you click add batch, it gets some information about the tracks you have selected, and then let's go to stems instead of a mini snapshot. This is a very, very powerful way to add mix passes very quickly. So what you get is you get a base name for the stems, which is copied from the main bounce dialog. So we'll call this just demo, right? Because it's not a main mix anymore. And then we get a separator, and then we get a mix pass prefix, and then a mix pass suffix. And you get an example name down here, which is a little bit hard to see. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So this example is Bounce Factory Demo, which is our base name, our separator, which is space dash space, then the word stem, because that's a prefix, then space dash space, and then drums, which is the name of the first track I have selected. And if I put a suffix, I could have stem there and get rid of it before. So I could have demo, drums, stem, and it's smart enough to know that if you don't have anything for the prefix, you don't get 2 separators. So the name is pretty clean. I actually like it better with stem drums for some reason. That's what I like. But you could also put, let's say this is based on R5 of the mix. So it's stem, drums, R5. So you can set this up however you want. It's pretty powerful. The next thing you can do, though, is we're only seeing the name of the first stem that's going to get printed. If you click Rename Stems, you now get a list of all of the selected tracks and their stem name, which is, of course, starting off as the name of the track. But this one is called BG1 VCA. That's not actually good. Right? We'll call this BG Vox instead. So this stem will now be called stem BG Vox, even though the track is BG1 VCA. And you'll notice there's a button here at the bottom, which we're not going to use on these tracks, but I'll show it to you in a second, which will strip Pro Tools additions from stem names. A lot of track names will have .01 or .cm or something like that at the end, so it can very smartly strip those off of some track names, which I'll show you in a second. So you say done, and we're back here, and now we can say add. And you'll notice down at the bottom now it says we have a stems set called Bounce Factory Demo. That's the base name, and that is 6 mix passes. So we've just set up main mix, TV, instrumental, acapella, main mix clean, acapella mix clean, and some basic stems. And let's say now I want to do some more complete stems. I'm going to select these 4 tracks just as a thing to show you the renaming. I'm going to add a batch. It's going to get playlist information for these stems. And we'll come in here and we'll look at the rename stems. And you notice this has a .cm, that has a .cm. If I click this, it will strip that from the name of the track. So you can clean up if you've got 30 or 40 tracks that all have playlist numbers or .cm or something like that at the end. It will clean them up all very quickly. Say done. I'm not going to bother adding these though, because we don't need them. So those are all of the different types you can do. And just I'm going to do a little recap of them, and we're going to click proceed. Standard mix pass, session exactly how you leave it when you click proceed with the name that's up here in the main bounce mix dialog. Muted tracks pass, whatever tracks you had selected when you click the button will be muted. Everything else will be the same as the main mix pass. Then the soloed tracks pass is whatever tracks were selected are soloed. And this includes the playlist selection, by the way, for solo and muting, but you can't do combinations of things. So that is those soloed, everything else set the same as the standard mix pass. Then you've got the playlist pass, which doesn't mute or solo tracks, but will just allow you to switch playlists. That's how we got to our clean mix. Then you've got the mini snap, which is like picture within a picture for these snapshots, where you can override the solo, mute, and or playlist selection and automation mode, actually. So if you need to mute a track but it has mute automation, you need to turn the automation to off. You can set that as well. And that will override those settings in the snapshot and print a pass. So if you remember, we did a mini snap with these two tracks on a different playlist and these two VCAs soloed. And that gave us our clean acapella. And then we did some stems based on selected tracks where each one of those is soloed for its own mix pass, and we got to name those individually with some powerful naming things. So I'm going to go ahead and hit proceed. And it's going to ask me what I want to call them. I'll call them main mixes. And it's going to go through the same process it did when we saved the first set of snapshots. But our list is going to look much different. All right, here we go. There's our list. Here's the one we took originally that we renamed to Demo Snapshot. And these are all of the mix passes that we just set up. And you'll notice that all your stems are listed individually. So this is a flat list of all of the mix passes. So I'm going to stop this video. In the next video, I'm going to show you how you can deal with a list and look at things differently to navigate through your mix passes. Because as you can see, you can end up with quite a few of them.